So we can start. Maybe you can tell me how is going on in a liceu.
They're so talented, just ridiculous. My music is very hard rhythmically, but these they've all experienced. They've sang other music of mine, so they're used to it. I wrote a role of Oppenheimer for Jerry. So when the movie came out over the summer, there were several articles about my opera. All of a sudden, comparing the two.
Exactly.
And
you were advanced.
And there's one aria that he sings, which has become famous.
Your whole career has been full of controversial, musically speaking.
Yes.
You were getting in the minimalism and rejecting melody, and then you find out that minimalism maybe was not the point itself, and you had to, explore the post-minimalism forms. And my question is, do you think now we are more free about the styles?
I think that minimalism is a very useful term. There's a lot of controversy about it, but it means something very specific. It's a kind of music that is tonal, and it has a regular beat, has a pulse, and it uses repetition to create large structures like bricks in a building. The early examples of it by Steve Reich and Philip Glass were very rigorous, very pure. And I've always been a dramatic composer. I wanted to find a way to be able to use these elements, but to have a language that has more capacity for sudden change, for the kind of emotional form that you get in great opera. So right from the start, my music was, I would say, a happily corrupted form of minimalism. Now, being an American, I'm open to so many different influences. Obviously, we hear jazz and rock and soul. So much of the great music in America comes from Black culture, so that has influenced me a great deal. And I love the classics. I love Beethoven and Mozart and Debussy and Stravinsky, so all of that enriches my language.
So you had so many operas going on, and you had Nixon in China, now in El Real. So finally, it seems that Europe is open to you.
Yes. In fact, I have more opera performances in Europe than in the United States. Part of that is actually good news for other composers, because in the United States there's suddenly an appetite for new operas. So many of younger composers than I are getting commissions and getting performances at very prestigious opera houses like the Metropolitan Opera in San Francisco. So that's a good thing, but I have to sort of step aside and let the younger generation have their chance. But I get a great deal of performances and presentations. Gustavo Dudamel recently did Nixon in China with Renee Fleming and Thomas Hampson
in Paris.
And there are 6 different productions of Nixon in China
going on.
There was one in which I unfortunately wasn't able to see, in Madrid, which was quite, I hear, wonderful. You did. And then there are many in Germany and Denmark, England, and then also my opera Dr. Atomic and The Death of Klinghoffer, which is a very controversial opera about this very tragic situation which we're experiencing this week between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It was controversial, particularly in the United States, because for many people there, any acknowledgement of the Palestinian situation that tells their story is very upsetting, and
Exactly.
immediately you get charged with being anti-Semitic. So when it was done at the Metropolitan Opera, there was, protests out front. But I recently did a concert performance of it at the Concertgebouw, just music and just the words, and it was very moving, and the audience was greatly appreciated, because it's fundamentally about people's feelings, the loss of their homeland, the loss of their loved ones, and it's very, I believe the libretto is written by a Jew, Alice Goodman, so I'm very proud of the opera.
But Antony and Cleopatra, it's also, this opera brought you to the same, brings you to the same area. This present in this area of Europe brings you to the past when you are,
Yes.
going forward and backwards within the time, because in this opera you do that,
Well, the story, it's based on history. Cleopatra is a real person, Antony is, but it's become myth.
Okay.
And it's, at least in the United States, it's very much tangled up with Hollywood. And we acknowledge that in the costumes, and also because in a way, Caesar Augustus was the first fascist. I noticed that Dante approves of Caesar Augustus, which is surprising, but he is a fascist. And so there are references to Mussolini and some old archival film of fascist Italy. So it's a story. First of all, it's a love story. It has one of the great female characters ever. I mean, I think Cleopatra is more interesting than Leonora or Aida. She's got so many qualities. She's sexy, she's politically very powerful, she's vulnerable, she's paranoid, like anybody who's not certain about whether their lover loves them or not. So it's a great opportunity to write this opera, and especially for Julia Bullock, who is, I think, the great American soprano. She hasn't been quite, she's at the start of her career, but I think this is a piece that's really going to make her famous.